Hi, I'm Rob from Ambition to Achieve. Thanks for joining us tonight from the sunny seaside town of Rhyl on the North Wales coast. And I'm joined tonight by Martin, and he's going to take us on a deep dive through his quite fresh entrepreneurial journey and also his career previous to becoming an entrepreneur. So, Martin, nice to see you again.
Rob, always good to see you.
Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about what you're working on in your business?
I would. Well, I mean, some things are very fresh. So spring is always a good time to start a business. Started a business in 2015, which I ran for 5 years. I know this is like Back to the Future, so I'm now back at it.
Like a full circle moment in a way.
Yeah, and literally about 32, 33 working days back into running a business again.
It's good, isn't it? So what was the journey? Obviously you've only just started fresh with this new business and we'll come on to that in a little while, but what's your kind of background previous to working within consultancy in the third sector?
So I always describe my CV as eclectic in that I worked in the third sector or voluntary sector, charity sector for after my graduation. So I was there 8 years, up until my kind of early 30s. And worked in community settings after that, so that was a kind of prolonged exposure to it. Have worked in the private sector, so have worked in business-to-business sales. I think there's something valuable about moving between sectors and within your career. And then ran a startup creative agency for 5 years, went into business development. There was a natural progression going from startup, basically working with some clients where I thought I loved what they did. I wanted to get more involved in their work, and didn't ask them; they asked me to be involved with them. And then within a economic development agency where we worked together, for over 6 years. And now was time to start up a consultancy work.
You'll have to excuse the noise we've got tonight. Within a public.
It's a live setting, isn't it?
It's a live setting. It's like being live TV. So, let's go back to your new business. Then, is it Prelude Solutions? Am I correct in saying that? Has the name changed slightly?
No. I mean, it's always difficult choosing a name, isn't it? So Prelude. There's two reasons for it. One is my love of English literature, so it's got a reference to Wordsworth, but it's also there's that work, or there's that period before something else. So I chose it because this period, I'm kind of early stages with it, and so let's see what happens and develops. But also I'm often working with clients where it's a prelude to what comes next for them as well. And supporting them and developing them. So whether that's work around supply chains, or whether it's work doing some really interesting work with a funder as they're developing a new fund. So my work, by its very nature, co-design work and bringing people together to work together to develop something new, is a prelude to what comes next. And whether that's a new funder exists, or it's a new working relationship. So the name matches the sort of the kind of work I'm doing.
Journey in a way.
Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it? So a lot of we've worked together for 6.5, 7 years, pretty much, haven't we? Before you started this new organisation, and you've always worked around communities and helping organisations solve challenges. So what was the inspiration around the focus of that work then, and the hackathon model? What led you to that sort of focus in that work?
So this does take us back 6.5 years, really. And the backstory is that I had this new role. I was working across Wales, supporting people to explore social enterprise, and I was looking for a vehicle to make that happen, or needed something that was beyond just sort of people come to a workshop, they gain a bit of knowledge, they've got an idea, they want to move that forward. And a bit of serendipity, which is a really important part of the business journey. So I was running some workshops in the valleys around social entrepreneurship, encouraging people to develop ideas. An academic from Cardiff Business School came along, and at the end he said, come and do this stuff for my students. And then a couple of months later we met for coffee, and he said, this is a serendipity. So we were at a venue, there was a hackathon going on. I was involved a little bit, and he said, well, come and do a hackathon with my students. And that got me thinking, really, and I thought, well, maybe hackathons are from the world of tech. And I thought, well, nobody's done a social enterprise one in Wales, so something that involves communities, developing ideas together.
Brand new idea as well, wasn't it, when you launched it all those years ago?
It was, yeah. So I went away, did a bit of research, talked to some friends in Wrexham who were involved in the Enterprise Hub. I thought, why don't we do this together? Really enjoyed working with them. So we ran the first one, and so this was in March 2020, which is significant because it was before the first lockdown. And 42 people came. We ran it as a 12-hour event, which now I look back and think, well, that was a bit, crazy.
It was a long day, wasn't it?
Yeah, we had £500 for the best idea. And as we kick off the event with all these people, and we had, like Wrexham Council involved, and the university, and the college, and Enterprise Hub, third sector organisations. £500 for the best idea. As I'm introducing it, I thought I've made a mistake here. I thought these people are not here for £500. They're here because they want to do something good for Wrexham. So I stopped that competition model afterwards, and it became much more about gathering people about issues they cared about. They wanted to do something different, do something new together, and so the competition element went. And actually, it was about a pathway. It was about starting something, pathway to developing it, and accessing support and more money than £500 to develop an idea. So it was a huge learning curve.
I mean, I remember obviously as that idea has evolved on, I think more recently they've become more sort of focus sessions for ideation within communities and wicked problems. Can you tell us a little bit more about sort of wicked problems and some of the things that you've encountered and supported over the years with these communities?
I mean, that first one in Wrexham, we kind of identified 6 kind of social challenges or wicked problems. So it was things like safety on the streets, homelessness, environmental issues, mental health, and we asked people to sign up on that basis, and then got people developing ideas together. I think the longer that's gone on, and as we're talking now, tomorrow I'm running my 88th event like that.
It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. It's a huge success.
Yeah, I mean, we've had, I guess, almost 4,000 people take part, and probably close to 700 organisations involved. And I think some of those events have been around specific challenges. So we did one on supporting refugees and asylum seekers build sustainable livelihoods. Some of them have been very niche. So one was around water quality in the Tyvee River.
Well,
and it was a 2-day.
Quite niche, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. 2-day event, 40 people, scientists, land managers, farmers, community organisations, academics. That was 2 years ago, and now the ideas from that 2-day gathering, the National Lottery Heritage Fund have just sort of awarded 1.4 million for those.
Solve some of them.
To tackle some of those issues.
So that's the kind of I remember you spoke about one recently, not close to where I live on the island, where you helped, was it Natural Resources, to look at parking issues within a village that has got quite a honeypot location as a beach.
Real acute local issues, right? So transport, access, and real issues for the local community, and I think things that just got stuck, from what I understand, in terms of community, public bodies. How do we move this forward? So, I think a bit of bravery from the public bodies of wanting to try a different method, a different approach, getting people working in different ways. That hackathon approach was, how do we involve people? They've got the answers. Communities have got the answers to these things. So how do we bring people together with people who've got resource, public bodies and so on, to find some new ways forward? And we're not going to fix everything in one go, but we're going to bring people together to actually begin to find different possibilities, fresh ideas, things then that can be further developed and married to support and resource to push things forward.
So would you say then, obviously, do you see yourself and your team as community connectors in a way, that kind of cog in the middle of the turning wheel? The person who, or the group of people who bring those two bodies together, so the community and the stakeholders or the public bodies?
I think it's partly that, because we're sort of sitting in between. So really value and respect and honour the fact that it's those working directly within local communities, that they are the key people. And because this work has gone not only across Wales, but it's gone, across the border into England, a little bit of work in Scotland, a little bit of work internationally. So, those people who are working day by day within communities, supporting, hosting, all the things they do, they're the real key people. But I think the work that we're doing sits in between those public bodies, those local communities, and it's bringing them together to work in different ways. So I think, Robert, there's always a danger that you're parachuting in, and that's never good. But to go in and work in a way that kind of respects the people in the work that's long term. But this is a short-term intervention that we can work in different ways and create an environment where that happens. And there's a bias towards new things happening. That's the role, that's the cog in the machine.
It's the kind of foster that positive relationships, and like you say, some communities I would imagine are harder than others to work with and get those stakeholders in to work with. Recently you won an award for this work, didn't you? Do you want to tell us a bit more about that award?
Yes, so this is the Institute of Collaborative Working, which I guess is the perfect kind of award. So it was a professor at Cardiff University who first told me about it, and I was like, I'm not a big fan of awards, if I'm honest. And then my colleague Paul, somebody else had told him about it, and we should put in an application for it. And they're big organisations, so we had to go up to London. We had to sort of, because this starts in the good work we've been doing, has been going for a few years. We had to go and pitch to a panel. Lord Everton was on, he was the host for it.
Massive.
And then we found out we were shortlisted. We had to go to the House of Lords for it, and we were up against Transport for London,
big players,
Balfour Beatty. So a couple of boys from Wales going was quite something. And then we found out we'd won it, and we won this industry to industry award. And I think this model that's been developed, bringing all these different people together to collaborate. Yeah, it was a nice fit, really.
Yeah, it was fantastic to see you obviously get that award. So you spend a lot of time bringing people together in in the role in the communities and with these different organisations. Why is that important to you, that element of the work of bringing people together and being that kind of cohesion point?
I think there's a couple of reasons. I think it's people, if you've got a problem in your own life, ultimately you are the person who needs to fix it, move it forward, and you're going to need support from other people, but you're going to be the driver. And if you look at that at a community level, communities they've got the answers, and it's recognizing and making most of all the strengths and the assets and the resources that communities have got. That's crucial. I think we touched on wicked problems, right? So a lot of the things that we're trying to deal with are, very complex issues, and we need multiple perspectives. We need to bring people together. We're all looking at the same things, but we're looking in different ways, and we've got different experiences. So I think we're building understanding by the fact that people are coming together and working on these issues, and we've got something that might emerge where there might be new working groups. That might be the first tangible thing. But yeah, you can't. It's a bit like an aquarium, right? All these different ways of looking into it, multiple perspectives. This is a little bit philosophical. This is Mary Midgley, the Oxford and Newcastle philosopher. You need different perspectives. There's not one way of looking at it. But actually bringing people together to have those conversations and to work together, that's a different thing. So one thing to say, we've got different perspectives. It's another thing for you and I to sit down with others around a table and say, how are we going to fix this together?
Yeah. I mean, it's similar when you look at, the promotion of good governance within a social business. The first bit of advice is to recruit a diverse board of directors.
Yeah.
Different viewpoints, different ages, different parts of the community, just to bring in that sort of cohesion. So obviously we've spoken there about common challenges. What are the biggest ones you see in communities, or what are the most common challenges communities are facing, let's say in the last sort of 3 months of your work?
That is a really big question, isn't it? There are certain challenges that are they're constant. They become part of the background noise. Challenges around deployability and the kind of community wealth building that benefits communities and not just a few. There are challenges. Our whole lives are recalibrated now by digital. And by the kind of addiction and attention factor on phones, and the knock-on effect that has for mental health. So there are whole swathes of challenges we can come into. I think with the kind of modest intervention that this sort of hackathon starts with a good approach thing is all about is really, can we get people talking? Can we get people working in different ways?
To break down those barriers in a way, yeah.
That's the crucial thing.
What would you say, obviously, digital advancement has been, I would say, accelerated since 2020 with the COVID lockdowns. Now, in recent years, you've got that development of AI, and that's something that comes up a lot in these interviews that I do. Some business people take it on really well, others don't. Would you say AI has a kind of developing factor in that negativity, or do you think it's a kind of a two-way street with this bit of positive and a bit of negative? Does that add to it?
I think both. I think from the standpoint of this work as it's developed, we kind of looked at how do we build AI into it so that people come, that they work together in small teams, and how do we use more technology. I think the longer we've gone on, I think the more I've realized that actually that space being free of technology largely is really freeing. So it's much more about the face-to-face human conversation. So there's an academic who I think put this, his take on this is really helpful, that you've got the spaceship and you've got the cloister. So you've got this area of technology, but we all need to withdraw into a space where for that time we're not really reliant on technology. We're reliant on
the old methods, the traditional methods.
Yes, ancient technologies
face-to-face,
of stories, experiences, the perspectives we've got on things. And actually now I think, this is really good. So the fact that we use, kind of large sheets of paper, post-it notes, people scribbling, writing, talking, laughing together.
Taking it back.
That human aspect is like, wow, this is actually something, this is worth something. And then we'll all go back and we'll be on our phones and we'll be using AI. But in that moment, we're telling each other stories, we're talking about our emotions and our experiences and our perspectives. That's really valuable.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, you went going back to what you said previously about hackathons being used in a digital space previous to how you launched this kind of role of work. But, that traditional aspect of having those notes then and those flip chart pads to go back to as well. Do you leave them with the communities or do you take them away? Are they able to archive that in a way and come back to those discussion notes in years to come?
Yeah, look, we always say to people, look, take photographs of all the stuff you've got, but often those events, all those insights, the data effectively, and all those ideas, depending on who I'm working with, they're often part of what people will capture. Okay, so I might be working with a public body, and they'll want to capture all those insights, and I will produce a report. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a health board, and they are selling an old hospital site. Okay, and they wanted the community input. So what we said is, we want to capture the community ideas. Okay, so we're not going to add our interpretation. So when we do those workshops and we hear those ideas and all those insights, we want that's done in the open, and we want the report to be in the open. We want people who came to access it, people who care about the sale of that site, who couldn't come to the events, we want them to access it. So that is open human data. That's really important.
Yeah.
But also, for the number of public bodies I've worked with, those insights will help them shape better decisions, because they can authentically say, this is what community have said, that this is what people who attended. Often the events are really well attended. So when people come, it gives a gravitas and a weight. So Wrexham is a really great example. They, one of the first recipients of long-term towns funding. We had 130 people come to the event, 16 teams, 811 ideas,
Crazy,
16 ideas pitched. But that went back to UK government, and when the city board made their decisions, and UK government, and they could say, this is what people have wanted. This is what they've said. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's definitely a huge body of work that you've done over the last sort of 6.5 years, and I think it'd be interesting maybe if we sat down again in a few years and see how, you know, you're going into the new situation in your new business, how that has maybe developed it or accelerated it and given you more freedom possibly to access other communities outside of Wales potentially. That might be a future date for us to get together and discuss it even further. So there's a lot of learning going on from what I'm, you know, listening to what you've got to say. What would you say has been one of the biggest things that you've learned from the people that you work with? So the people within the communities. What's one of the biggest things you've learned?
So my approach to this, all right, I'm always listening to what people say. I'm always listening to their feedback, because they come into events that are they're unique, all right? They've never been to anything like this before, so what can they compare it to? Always listening to what people's feedback is. So particularly like refining the language we use. So I was finding I was using language that is too technical, and that I'm very sensitive to the fact that people will think, oh, this isn't for me, or it'll put them off in some way, or they'll think, I never want people to feel inadequate. I think people have got ideas within them and insights, and that's really important. So I remember, you know, one lady coming to an event. She was from a church setting up a food pantry. We used to send an agenda out. We stopped doing agendas completely. And she'd seen it the night before, and she said the language had clearly put her off. You know, right? It's innovation, ideation, and
a bit scary.
And she said, "But I promised to come." Okay. And I felt inside, I thought, we've done you a real disservice here. This is an event, this for you. So I tried to reassure her, and I thought, and an hour later, I can see her gesticulating, and then when she did her pitch, it was brilliant. And I just thought, okay, well, you're right, be careful with the language, because the language was a barrier, and it didn't need to be a barrier. Okay. And then, you know, there was an event that we ran here in North Wales, and we had an academic on we sometimes have a panel. She was part of the panel, and she came over to me and she said, people are using design thinking tools. They don't know, do they? I said, no, well, they can use the tools. They don't need to know the theory. So don't weigh people down with the theory. So that's been one of, like, a big learning curve of that listening, sensitivity. I always want those spaces to be welcoming, and I want them to be inclusive. And I genuinely believe we have everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what your background, you have got a part to play in making things better for everyone. So I don't want any barriers to stop people, or people feeling excluded. Yeah.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? Obviously humanizing, and that's what we're trying to do with this platform. You know, we spoke there about digital sometimes is a bit of a killer of people's time, but we try to get those stories across through this platform by using, you know, the digital platforms such as YouTube, for example, and simplifying it. So speaking to a range of different people, and, you know, trying to understand different areas of work, and hopefully that's what we're doing through the storytelling. So talking a little bit about storytelling there, then, can you share a memorable moment or success story that stands out to you from your work over the last 6.5, 7 years, or even longer if you want to go further back?
Yeah, there's a couple. So that event you mentioned, you know, not from where you live in North Wales. I look back and think that was one of my favourite events, because clearly that local challenge around the parking and the kind of logjam in the village, that's an acute issue for people. And I think when people came to that event, the room needed to thaw out. Okay. And when that started to happen, and when people started to, I mean, honestly, when I stood up first to introduce, and I thought people were looking at me with daggers, all right? And, you know, in that situation, my role is I'm there to facilitate, you know, but public meetings, you can stand up the front, you can be a bit of a lightning rod, because but my sympathies were people and their frustrations. So the room thawing out, and people going with a process, and you start to hear laughter, and people are problem solving. But that's what, you know, somebody said to me from a public body at the end. They said, how did you work that magic? And it's like, well, we've just changed how people work. We've just said, you've got the answer. I mean, literally stood up and said, I haven't got the answers here. I've got a blueprint. I'm not here to tell you what the answer is. You've got the answers. And I think so. That was a huge success.
Quite memorable, yeah.
And the Wrexham one, and to see 130 people, that feel-good factor. We had a choir as part of it, and it was seeing a group of people across a town come together to say, yeah, we want to see something happen. We're going to work together to do this, and the positive vibe. You want to see more of that, I think.
Definitely. I mean, the next set of questions, keep looking down here to keep us on track.
Yeah.
This one's probably quite a big question for you. Any surprises? What has surprised you most during your career? And what have communities taught you that you didn't kind of expect to learn or see?
Okay. I mean, the surprises is interesting. I think I'm old enough where when you leave school and you start a career, you think it's a straight path. And you choose a profession and that's it. And I think one of the surprising things, and I kind of observed it in other people first when I saw them change direction, I almost thought, how can that be a right thing? Have you failed in what you're doing? And I think coming to learn that actually that zigzagging is a really healthy thing. I remember reading a book by Dave Evans which was about design thinking, but it was about your career or your choices for business. And the approach was, well, don't have one thing, because if that fails, you've got nothing else. So have at least 3, or if not 7, and at least have one idea that even if people laugh, you think, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. So maybe that third idea is you're going to be a clown. But having those multiple choices, and that surprised me, because I think it was a set of assumptions I had that a successful career only went in one direction, and realizing actually, you have multiple skills and you should be nurturing them and developing them, and actually that could lead to all sorts of really interesting things. So that's been one of the surprises. Question about what I've learned from communities. I think one of the things that's just clear and obvious is how people love the places where they live. And I love the place where I live, and yet the pressures and experiences and the changes, that's tough going. And I'm a really big believer that no matter where you're from, you need to love the place where you live and be committed to it. And there's always something to learn from. I serve on a town council, and I look at some of the other councillors, and I think they are the heart and soul of this community. Their skills and their families and their commitment, and there's a huge amount to learn, I think, from people like that who are rooted and constantly wanting to work
community
for the good.
Developers. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's huge success stories in Welsh communities, isn't there? And we could probably go on for hours looking at that. But if we go back there a little bit, when you spoke about having 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 different ideas, when you think about entrepreneurship, that's very similar, isn't it? You should have a number of income avenues and a number of ideas to be able to fall back on. And I think that diversity is what makes your business kind of successful. So looking at organizations working with communities quickly then, if you could change one thing about how they work together, what would that be to kind of maybe break down those barriers in some communities?
Okay,
what would be one change that you...
There's a straightforward answer to this, all right? But I guess it's fairly controversial. So all those organizations, all right, they look up to who they're funded by. They struggle to look across as to who they can work with, because they've always got to satisfy the funders. So I think one of the people always say about organizations being siloed. I think that's a prison mentality. If you're entrepreneurial, you don't think like that. Yeah. You think about how do we create value, how do we create more opportunities. So I think those organizations need to be less institutional, less concerned about funders, and more concerned about how do we work together? How do we become more entrepreneurial and take more risks? It's known as the prisoner's dilemma. So you have to make sacrifices to do that. You can't have everything your own way. But actually, more people win that way. That is a complete seed shift. I talked to a local authority where they through shared prosperity funding, they had too many small organizations that they were funding. It multiplies administration, They say, why can't the third sector be like the private sector, where you can have a main contractor and subcontractors? Well, I don't think that would really work, but I think there must be better models for how we do this, how we share learning, how we work together. But all those organisations, we're all on the treadmill of funding's running out. We need more funding. We've got to protect what we're doing,
and trying to deliver similar projects as well, isn't it? Trying to bring answers to similar problems within communities, isn't it? So
absolutely,
it's creating, in a way, that circle, isn't it? That ecosystem of partners and communities and people and delivery bodies.
It's exactly that, yeah. And we all struggle because the funding cycles have got shorter and shorter, and that's punitive because people are then, I might have to look for a new job, or so I don't know what the grand fix is, but certainly like a local authority leader said to me, we haven't had a normal funding year for the last 6 years. Okay, and you just can't.
It's fraught times, isn't it?
You can't really get to grips with issues or have the people in place to keep on that work with that kind of scenario. So that the stop start, we'll do this for a period, the money runs out, we're stuck. Doesn't help anybody.
So to look at something a bit more positive then, what would you say is the most enjoyable part of your work? I can see a smile on your face.
Yeah,
there.
I mean, look, running events gives me a lot of joy. At events, a lot of things happen at events that you can't measure or quantify, and there's serendipity. You don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know what initiatives spark up. And I think, while from all these events, you kind of think, who did what next, and how did that work, but sometimes you find out little stories of how people met and they've started something together you would never have known about. So I think there's just like a magic and a beauty about events where people are open, they're curious, they're willing to explore new ideas, they're doing that collaboratively. So it's not like eggs in an egg box stuck, all separated. Where there's a bit of an omelette in terms of people
together.
Yeah, and and you just don't know what's going to happen. So I think there's something very exciting about that. And also having good energy in the room, that's really important. So I draw a lot from seeing people,
from meeting people and working.
It's people who care about an issue coming together, working together, wanting something better. That's gold.
So that brings us nicely on to some of our last questions now, and it talks about sort of excitement for the future. What excites you most about your future and the future of the communities that you support? That's a fairly big question.
That is a big question. I think for the moment, because this is a new venture, I'm enjoying it. Okay, so I'm not thinking too far ahead. It's only been a couple of months, Rob. The kind of conversations, opportunities, new work that's emerging, it's blowing me away. I'm like pinching myself. This is like, it's almost surreal how good it's progressing, and part of that is because over years, both like LinkedIn has been really important in terms of that digital network, but also the kind of real life networks and who you've worked with. That's exciting, and I'm deliberately not trying to look too far ahead at this stage. I know it's important to do it, but I'm almost giving myself permission to say, enjoy this, see what emerges and who you meet. There are some longer term plans I'm thinking, or what I would like to do. I won't tell you about those. We can talk about those again, all right? But in the short term, it's things are emerging and developing, and there's something. It's very rewarding, and I'm really grateful for how all that all that's coming together. Some big things I'd like to work on. I don't know. I mean, there's a vein here through a lot of things I've worked on around leadership, and that's been a huge privilege. And I think there's more I'd like to do in that leadership space than I've currently done. Very privileged to have had loads of opportunities for public speaking. So a lot of my work is public speaking and facilitating, and it's those two skills, moving back and forth between them. And there's something more I want to do. I'm doing work with organisations, training them on facilitation skills, public speaking skills. I don't want to do that all the time because that
takes
work
you away from
that's the wicked problems and the challenges. but yeah, there's something exciting about all of that.
Okay, so that brings us on to our final few questions now.
Okay.
And we have to kind of bring it back into a full circle moment there. I mean, you said about plans for the future. That's just given us a nice open door to potentially have another sit down in a few years' time and see how long, how far you've come in that journey. And that's what we're trying to do with this platform, is to have these initial meetings and conversations and interviews, and then come back to you in a few years' time to see, that story in that time. So what's your ambition for the future then?
Life is very short. I'm 51, so it was weirdly enough, I'm in good health, but you still think, well, what do I want to do for the next 10 years? This work I'm doing, can we train other people to do it? Can we further develop it and extend it? And I think about, who do I want to work with and where do I want to see differences happening? But I think also locally where I live, and and young children growing up, and what do I want to do on that front? So I go back to at this stage I don't want to think too far ahead, but at the same time, there's that whole thing of what do I want to build and how do I want to work in that leadership space that I'm thinking through and working on.
Okay, so last question then, and we do this as almost like a signature question towards the end of these interviews.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to the viewers who are pursuing an ambition of their own into the future? What sort of one piece of advice could you give to them?
Okay, so one piece of advice that goes in two directions. Okay, so on the one hand, I would say, do not give up. Okay, I like one of the mottos that's guided me for, I don't know, almost 20 years is refuse to be discouraged. Okay, lots of things will blow you off course, will discourage you. Refuse to be discouraged. Okay, so that grit and fight and determination is really important. We often start things at different stages of life and different experiences, and people can go through redundancy, or people can go through a relationship breakup, or something doesn't go right and you want to start something new, and you've got to start something new. And I think that having that, and you've got to fight, and that fight and determination, some people get to start something and there's more things are in place. Okay, and it's great if you've got that, but if you haven't got that and you want to start something, and you can see where I'm leaning with this, don't give up. Keep fighting, keep going. At the same time, you've got to be listening, and you've got to take on board kind of feedback. As
got to be a sponge in a way, haven't you, as well?
You have, yeah. And both things. I don't want to contradict myself. So what I want to say is, you've got to do that. At the same time, things not working out, that's okay. You've been able to learn from. You will learn more from mistakes and the things that don't work out, even though they hurt, than you often will with a success. And trying to keep both those things in tension and together, so that you don't, you're not sort of blindly ploughing on when actually you should be changing course. Holding those, that's not, it's wisdom in life, isn't it? And how you hold those two things together. But I think, I hate making mistakes, but those mistakes, picking yourself up and learning from them,
biggest learning curve, aren't they?
That's the essence of, and you will learn more. So and I think anybody who goes out and it's something entrepreneurial and they want to do something new and something different, all power to you, because it takes courage, and it can often be a very brave decision. You don't know if it's going to succeed, but you're going to think, I'm going to give it my best shot. So I think, every time, having started a small business previously, and you rub shoulders with people on that journey, and you just think, well, all power to you for doing this and for
going for it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. This is interview number 8 now that we've been doing over the last sort of 3 months, and when we do that signature last question, that's everybody's answer, is to just go for it, but become that sponge, but keep one ear to the ground as well for future developments. Nice succinct answer there, Martin.
Look, Rob, I would say as well, don't be afraid to zigzag. So you could start something. It doesn't have to be forever. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to do this and then I'm doing it till I retire, and if it doesn't work out, I will have failed. I think it's okay to zigzag, and actually when that door opens, there are other doors that will open as well.
And pivots as well, isn't it? You know, work from sort of, you know, entrepreneurship, like I said earlier on, is that ecosystem, isn't it? And having that circle of friends, if you like, in that ecosystem, and having, as you said, 3 or potentially 7 or more different ideas. And I think that's the success point, isn't it? And if there are failures, not to be afraid of failing. And you know, the biggest learning comes from failure, doesn't it?
It does.
Definitely. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Rob.
That was amazing. A nice setting here tonight. The sun's just going down behind us in Grail. It's been interesting. You're here for an event tomorrow, or
yes,
is it learning development?
Tomorrow I'm running my 88th hackathon, all right, which, as you will know, 88 miles an hour was the DeLorean speed as went back to the future, all right? Yeah. So this is Hack to the Future, and we've got a group of there's a leadership program that I've been involved in overseeing that's happening in Rill at the moment. It's all people involved in social leadership. So we're gathering them together, and the day is about how do we better collaborate as leaders to meet the needs of our communities.
Great. Thanks, Martin. Thanks for your time. Right. So if you've enjoyed this video, do give it a like, and please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you're working on an ambition at the moment, please do pop it in the comments. We do take time to read through all ambitions, and we'll get back to you. And we'll see you all again next time. Thanks for watching.